Gaelscoil Line in my area has just recently been denied planning permission for temporary buildings on the Mount Anvil site that Dún Laoghaire County Councillors agreed to dispose of recently, earlier this year, in order to provide a site for both temporary and permanent buildings for the school. Parents have expressed absolute disbelief and fury that this is now, I think, the third planning permission put in by the department itself for temporary buildings that has been refused. And they asked the question, do the Department of Education know how to put in a planning application for a school that's been looking for a location for 7 years now?
Interim accommodation in a building at Kildane, and also a room is rented from Mount Marion Parish Centre, which is located directly across the road. It is intended that the school will move to interim accommodation in a permanent site in Mount Anvil for September 23. In relation to the interim accommodation for Gaelscoil Line, an application for planning permission was lodged for the Mount Anvil depot site on the 21st of June 22, and the final grant of permission issued from Dún Laoghaire County Council on the 16th of September 2022 with 18 conditions. My department's design team responded to the Council on these conditions on the 5th of October and are currently liaising with the local authority to finalise and agree all pre-commencement conditions to allow the building contractor to commence work on the site. The contractor has been appointed. Agreement in principle for the acquisition of the permanent site was reached with the executive of Dún Laoghaire County Council in June of 21, subject to the approval of the elected members of the Council. The approval by the elected members to dispose of the lands to the Minister for Education was granted at a Council meeting in April of 22. This acquisition is subject to the successful grant of planning permission for the permanent school facility. With regard to the permanent school building project, the Department has commenced the tender process for the appointment of the project manager for the delivery programme, which includes Gaelscoil Line. An expressions of interest notice was published on the e-tenders portal on the 14th of November. Once the project manager is appointed, they will commence the tender process for the appointment of the design team that will take the project forward through the stages of architectural planning to tender and construction. The school and its patron body will be kept fully informed as these steps are progressed. Gaelscoil Line is part of a strong pipeline of school building projects for delivery under the Government's National Development Plan. The Department has a strong track record of delivery with over 360 school building projects at construction during 22, including over 50 new schools. The Department has an allocation of 4.4 billion to facilitate delivery during the period of 21 to 25.
Mr. The conditions that the planning application failed to meet were around things like lack of public lighting, lack of proper pest control, failure to put in correct waste management systems, and other green conditions in those conditions that you mentioned. Now, what the parents in Gaelscoil Line find really hard to believe is that where there are particular conditions around, building a temporary school building, and bear in mind this is a school that was sort of authorised to exist since 2015 and has been in a temporary situation since then, completely inappropriate where it is in Dean's Grange at the moment, that the department does not know how to put in a planning application that meets these conditions, and therefore we get delay after delay after delay. Can you explain that? And really, can you give a clear timeline as to when the school will actually gain access to the Mount Anvil site? And what is the timeline for the completion of the permanent, not just the temporary, but also the permanent school buildings for Gaelscoil Line?
To be clear, Deputy, the planning system is the planning system. But in the first instance, I would reject totally your view in terms of the Department of Education and their delivery of school buildings and in terms of their knowledge of planning. The Department has an extremely strong record of delivery in terms of school buildings. Over 360 school building projects were at construction during 2022. That's a phenomenal investment by the Department, and that includes brand new schools, of which there are over 50. The Department has an allocation of 4.4 billion to facilitate delivery also during the 21 to 25 school period. Specifically in relation to Gaelscoil Line, the application for the Mount Anvil site was lodged in June of 22, and the 16th of September of 22 planning was granted with conditions. The department's design team responded to the council on these conditions on the 5th of October and are currently liaising with the local authority to finalise and agree all pre-commencement conditions to allow the building contractor to commence the work on site, and the contractor has also been appointed.
Yeah, it still seems quite extraordinary that some of those conditions couldn't be met and that we have delayed around the failure to meet some of those conditions, and I've just outlined what some of them are. You would have thought that people would know how to meet these sort of basic conditions, green conditions as they were described to me. But also remember, this is a long saga. They were originally promised another site in Newtown Park Avenue. Then there was a long battle to get another site. We had to have council land that had been originally zoned for housing disposed to them, and people gave it to them because Gaelscoil Line needed a site. But they seriously question, A, when will they actually gain access? What is the timeline to gain access to the Mount Anvil site for temporary buildings? And what is the timeline for the completion of the permanent school buildings for Gaelscoil Line? Is it possible to get answers to that? Because otherwise things seem to just drag on and on and on.
The school will move to interim accommodation on their permanent site at Mount Anvil for 2023, for September of 23. Since the grant of planning permission received on 16th of September 22, department officials, the project manager and the design team have engaged with the planning and roads departments of Dunleer and Rathdown to agree the works required for the public road and junction outside the school site that are required under condition 7 of the planning permission. The last communication from the local authority to our design team on the 17th of November indicated that the council is finalising its programme of work for Mount Anvil and Deer Park Road. The works to the road junction to be carried out by my department for the interim accommodation for the school are required to align with the council's programme of works. Both my department's design team and the local authority are jointly working to agree that alignment. Specifically in relation to the permanent project, once the project manager is appointed, they will commence the tender process for the appointment of the design team that will take the project forward through the stages of architectural planning, including preparation of the planning application to the local authority. It's not possible at this time, in advance of the appointment of the project manager and design team and ahead of the pre-planning consultations with the local authority, to indicate when the planning permission for the project will be secured. However, considerable work has been done and the school will be kept informed via their patron, which I believe is on Forest Patronata.
Okay, we have